Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Enterprise Edge podcast. My name is Mark Vigoroso, founder and CEO of the Enterprise Edge. Thank you for being with us. We are pleased to have with us today on a special episode brought to you in partnership with QAD Redzone, a gentleman by the name of Kevin Davis, who is the VP of Finance at AmSafe. He is the senior most finance executive at the company that has a fascinating role in industry, in aviation specifically, including space travel, that he'll tell you about. But we're going to have a discussion today about the journey the company's been on, specifically in digital transformation and AI-enabled modernization, brought to you from a finance executive's perspective, which is becoming more and more important amongst many of the people who listen to this podcast, as the mandate for auditable and demonstrable proof is becoming more and more strict with regards to what impact has specifically AI driven into an organization that can be evidenced within a P&L or a balance sheet or a cash flow statement, right? We're seeing it in the public markets and the private markets alike. So before we jump into the conversation, let's just do a quick, Kevin, thank you for being here. Thanks for spending the time with us today.
No, excited to be here. Appreciate it, and look forward to the discussion and diving into what we've done with the QAD team and the Champion AI.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. And that's where we're going to start today. And we're going to have Kevin try to condense a very complex series of work streams that have unfolded over the recent months and years into sort of an intro and a sort of a context that we can ask some questions and learn from. It's been quite a journey that the company's been on. And so, Kevin, why don't we start with a little bit, just a real thumbnail on AmSafe, the company. There's some really interesting fun facts about the company I encourage you to share. And then just kind of the high points, the tips of the iceberg on the journey that you've been on with QAD all the way up till present day. It would be that'd be great.
No, sounds good. So we've been on or a partner with QAD since 2007. We were on the SE on-prem version. We went through a lot of customizations and modifications to the system that really prevented us from doing much upgrading until 2023. Starting in December of 22, we kicked off our transformation to the new QAD Adaptive at that time, and ultimately went to an on-cloud version and moved away from the on-prem, did a lift and shift in 22, and then ultimately to the newest version in 23. And it's been a great journey with QAD, really helping the organization and business continuity as we move forward, making sure we are on a supported version of the software. But then QAD purchased Kavita in about a year or so back, 2 years back, and integrated it into their Champion AI. Got a chance to speak with that team, and initially we thought our version would not be compatible. And ultimately QAD went back with us and said, yeah, we can go to an older version and integrate Champion AI with that. And then we started to look and see, okay, what processes do we want to integrate that with? Do we want to go across the board in everywhere where we have transactional activity, or do we want to focus in one area first? And we ultimately decided on our sales order entry. We have customers all over the planet. Almost every airline across the globe uses our restraints. And in that, we want to make sure that we have a efficient order entry process, and it's one of our areas where, except for direct labor, probably has the most personnel of any place in our workforce. The sales order entry process, customer communication, customer interfacing process, and ultimately wanted something that could receive the orders from the customers, read a PDF, input that order into the system, and then confirm that information via email back to the customer. Our goal with any AI implementation that we did is to remove 40 to 60% of the transactional activity and make that more efficient. And then ultimately, as we grow, ideally, we're not having to add more heads to support that volume. and the AI agent can help with that, and also reduces some of the not only inefficiencies but some of the errors that occur with that as well. But we wanted to make sure that throughout the process that we had a user interface and user review to make sure that ultimately we didn't let the AI run rampant, right? We didn't have a, Terminator situation or a $1 billion PO get released out to a vendor or change the quantity for a customer or anything else. So we wanted to make sure that it did a lot of the transactional activity of inputting the information and creating the sales order, but ultimately still queued up for a review screen or something for the user interface as well.
Well, that's great. That's great. Kevin, a couple things. Could you help the audience here get a sense for the scope and scale of the AmSafe business in terms of dollars or employees or anything that might be helpful to understand the scale of the business?
So we have about 500 employees split through 3 locations globally, one in China, one in
Mm-hmm.
Illinois, and then one in Phoenix, Arizona. We
Mm-hmm.
service every major airline globally,
Mm-hmm.
either through crew restraints or passenger restraints. Most aircraft that you get on in the U.S., it's going to be an AmSafe belt if you flip it over that is going to keep you safe in that plane and in your seat. If you look at any of the number of major airline headlines that have happened recently, the issue at LaGuardia with the fire truck, there was actually a flight attendant who was ejected from that plane over 100 yards. It was our seatbelt that kept her safe in that seat as she was
Wow.
ejected. The flight in India, the one person that lived on that flight, it was AmSafe belt that kept them safe. The flight up in Toronto that flipped over with all the passengers hanging upside down, it was an AmSafe seatbelt keeping them strapped in safely, as well as the plug that blew out of the Alaska flight a couple years back. That seatbelt keeping that person safe in that seat was an AmSafe belt. So
Wow.
AmSafe is known globally when it comes to commercial passenger aviation restraints. And
Yep.
again, 500 employees, 3 locations, and a global footprint.
Very cool. And let's not forget, I think it's pretty cool. You guys provided the restraints on the Artemis 2 mission, is what I understand, which gives you the honor of being the furthest restraint flown into space. Is that correct?
We are indeed. We do have that
Yeah,
distinction.
that's very cool. Very cool stuff. And what a worthwhile pursuit, right? Absolutely. All
No,
right. Well,
absolutely.
let's start the some of the areas we'd love to learn more about, because I think you all in the journey you've been on, and certainly from the beginning, right? But most recently with sort of proving out some of these hypotheses with regards to AI. I think you've got learnings that perhaps you might even be too close to at this point and not realize how instructive they could be to some of your colleagues in the industry. And so I'll do my best to see if we can pull these out. But also for those that are listening, Kevin is going to be in person at QAD's Champions event in September in Chicago. I hope to be there as well. But for those of you who are interested, I'm sure there's folks at QAD who can help you get there. But it's certainly another opportunity to continue to learn from Kevin and others that are on this journey in the manufacturing space. So let's talk a little bit about. So AmSafe is part of TransDigm, and I think has been so since 2012. Is that right, ish?
That's correct.
That's right. So and I don't know a lot about TransDigm, but in my own research, it seems like there's quite a bit of discipline, operating discipline around capital allocation and capital deployment, and so I'm curious about your experience if you just rewind a few years, maybe, or months even. Yeah, you can tell me when it was. When you looked at the implications that AI in all of its forms might have for AmSafe, did you prepare a case, that a CapEx case, a business case that had to be run up the flagpole? What did that approval process look like? Was there anything in there that you had more or less confidence in terms of what the payoff could be over time?
So we started the journey in planning our FY26 plan or budget season. So basically June of 25, we're putting that plan together for what we're going into this year. Our fiscal year kicks off in October. And ultimately, as a part of that plan, we put together a certain number of dollars allocated in our CapEx for AI, but then savings that it needed to return as well. There's a high level of autonomy within TransDigm, but a high level of accountability as well. And TransDigm definitely has a bias for action. And it's, I think, more critical to bypass the red tape and the reviews that never end and the additional layers of escalation to get approval. Once we had the funds approved in our plan, it was on us to deliver the savings that we had committed to. And during Q1 of this fiscal year, ended up being behind the eight ball a bit on spending those CapEx dollars and moving forward because my primary AI resource, who had sent for training and certification, ultimately went on FMLA leave and never came back. So I'm a quarter behind and still have dollars that I need to deliver to the business. So it was how do we move quickly? And initially, I wanted to partner with QAD and Champion, but ultimately the version we were on wasn't going to be offered as backwards compatible. And then looked at other AI vendors, and with any ERP system, the more things that you stamp on top of it or piecemeal or add on just can provides additional layers of complexity and challenges of where something can break in processes and communication. And so I wanted to eliminate that as much as possible. And it was good to hear that Champion was going to be offered to our version in about February timeframe. And then we identified the process that we were going to do. And then it was betaing out that process and making sure that they could have a strong proof of concept, that they could deliver ultimately what we needed to and remove the transactional activity that we wanted to. Once they proved that, then it was ultimately the decision was made very, very quickly to move forward with this option and let's get the delivery that we're seeking or the cost reduction that we're seeking. One of it's going to be personnel and time related, but other is going to be error proofing and error reductions, whether it be on our production floor, or in this case with sales order entry, making sure pricing, customer delivery, address, drop ship, right, all that information, the matching between what the PO has and what our system has, and ultimately what we have on the sales order is key. And as we reduce that time that is needed to input orders, and we can get more orders input with less people ultimately. And that's our case as we move forward.
Yeah, it's, and we'll talk about the case in all of its layers, but you know, it's the idea is doing more with less. Ultimately, is sort of like the simplification of what you just said, and being able to get more output with the same or even fewer resources, equating to efficiency and productivity gains that that potentially free up capacity to do even more value-added work. All of that sort of compounds, and so we'll talk about this as unfolds. But before we do that, I think you were a participant in a white paper that QAD put out a few months back, a CFO white paper, which is still out there, by the way. It's a great piece of work. It's on the QAD website, and a lot of the point of view of the CFO with regards to a lot of these operating and financial value lenses, if you will, before, during, and after these AI work streams. And one of the numbers I saw in there, I'd love to ask you about and see if there's there's a story behind the story. One of them was, I think, help me if I'm wrong here, but that what you've got now, or at least at the time of publication, was AI agents that are handling, from a proportion perspective, about 60% of a process or all the processes, freeing up your team for sourcing and supplier strategy, which is specifically what I was just referring to about capacity to do other work. And I'm curious about that 60% number and what the process, like which processes of is? Do you recall that number? Does that number ring a bell?
It does. It does.
Okay.
So our goal with any AI project that we're looking at is, can it remove or reduce the transactional activity for a process 40 to 60%, 60 being kind of the ideal, 40% being the minimum that we're going to look at moving forward. And when we
Yep.
looked at customer service, sales order entry with Champion AI, it's, can it take an email receipt from an order from a customer, or if we are going out to a portal, can we put that file or that PO out in a file for the agent to go out and grab in a regular interval, input all that
Yep.
information into a sales order that has all the ITC checks and requirements, international trade compliance, since we are shipping internationally. About 45% of our business is going internationally versus domestic. That it can do all the required checks, it can input all the required fields. And then our sales order or customer service team is just going through and reviewing the information versus having to input all that information. And then ultimately being able to create an email and confirm that information and the lead time of that order back out to the customer. And then ultimately, if the customer is like, hey, that lead time won't work, and responding back, it then can create a escalation window to respond back to that customer. The customer could have an AOG issue, which is an aircraft on the ground issue where they need
Yep.
an expedited order. And the agent can handle that communication back and forth and escalations for review to move that order up in priority as well in our production cycle. Then ultimately, as that order is then processed to our planning department, our production team, we have AI agents who can interact with that and reprioritize order or schedule orders appropriately, which previously we had 3 different planners having to go through
Got it.
constantly in our process and do that and work with the ops team. And then if you had allocated inventory to that order, unallocating, reallocating, now all that can be done by an agent, freeing up the individual's time. If we look at customer service, to have better customer interactions and improve the customer relationship and communication, the customer intimacy. So we have better forecasting, understand what's going on better in their business to better supply them and provide additional value to their organization. If we look at the planning side, it allows them to address more orders and have less overflowing their plate. As we look at production, again, the error proofing that we're seeing from the AI, even in our quality area, we have kiosk machines that can do AI integrated review of parts to keep bad parts from going out, right? So it's both the error proofing, but then also making time available for our users. That way they can have better customer or vendor intimacy and make better decisions with the data they're given.
That's impressive. That's impressive. And that first use case, to describe that again, is it the sales order? Tell me that qualifier again.
Yeah, sales order entry. So as we looked at
Sales order
the
entry.
60% reduction for sales order entry, we wanted to look at that specific process. How long does it
Yep.
take them to go get the PO from the email, right? Go through,
Right.
review that PO on one screen, input all that data on another screen, when the AI agent can take that, and now they're just having to do the review process at the end.
So Kevin, talk to me just a really quick one about sort of I mean, there's no finish line. This will be a continuous effort of continuous improvement, continuous innovation. Sales order entry is probably, let's just call it a workflow or a process, is probably one of maybe hundreds, you tell me, of sort of discrete workflows and processes that make up
I would
manufacturing. Is it even more? I don't know. You tell me.
I would say hundreds is a pretty good
Okay.
starter there. As we
All right.
look at whether they're looking at true manufacturing or processing information in the ERP system, whether
Yeah.
that be orders to vendors, right, orders from customers,
Right.
or
Right.
ultimately shipments out, right?
Right. And are they all addressable in your mind when it comes to automation, specifically with Champion?
I think we're finding that there's more and more opportunities. Another one that we've done is cash posting, which
Mm-hmm.
on that one, on the accounting and finance side, more the administrative side,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
We receive remittances from customers at different points in time. We receive the
Mm-hmm.
cash in the bank at different points in time than what we receive the remittances. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
days or weeks different.
Yep.
So what we've done with that is create a table of review. So every day when a remittance comes in from a customer, it's building that table in the database. And then
Mm.
ultimately, again, I wanted to create controls. So I didn't want to give the AI agent access to our bank account. So what we do is we go out and pull the bank activity daily, put it in a folder. The AI agent goes and reviews that information. And what was taking our user, our AR clerk, roughly 3 to 4 hours a day for each cash posting is now less than an hour a day of review
Wow.
confirmation. Again, you may not receive some remittances from some customers. They may have taken a discount on an invoice that doesn't match up with what we have, whatever the case may be. So there's still some review that's needed there, but it has definitely been a huge time savings for our team.
That's tremendous. It's tremendous. Kevin, I want to talk to you about decisions. I liked what you said a little while ago about TransDigm having a bias for action, which I think is what you said. And the reason for that is because, I used to work for a manufacturer that claimed the very same thing. NCR, the inventor of the cash register. I spent 8 years there, and they meant it. They meant it, and there was a culture around execution and decision velocity and decision rights definition and documentation, right? Defining who can decide what, when, and why in order to keep things moving and not bottlenecked. And so I'm wondering, in your experience around decisions relative to emerging technology like AI, are there owners? Like, is there sort of like a consortium of people at your level, operations, uh, CIO, IT type role, your role, that own these decisions around technology investment? Because we all know, and we've seen and we've heard from a lot of the pundits, that what defines success or failure only partially depends on the technology. It depends at least as much on things like risk management, organizational change management, right? Process transparency and documentation. A lot of things go into it, right? So it's really not just an IT decision. So I'm curious how those decisions are getting made at AmSafe with regards to AI.
So again, it starts with TransDigm and being a very autonomous, accountability-driven organization that's pushed down to the business unit level. All of my counterpart VPs are represented in that decision making, but ownership as well. Big for us. I'm also responsible for IT within my organization that rolls up to me. So accounting, finance, and IT ultimately
Okay.
runs into my responsibility.
Yep.
And with any AI project we're doing, there's a strong technology component to that, and making sure that the cybersecurity factors are there, that we've done the vetting of the organization, make sure that we're not letting any bad actors into our environment. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm.
So first, we're going to have users from across the board saying, hey, whether it's in our manufacturing team, our procurement team, our customer service sales team, whatever, we'd like to do an AI project in this area with this function.
Mm.
First off, we got to make sure that original processes are in place, because if you're adding technology to something that doesn't have guidelines, doesn't have processes, doesn't have good data, whatever the case may be, you're just putting the complexity in a technology environment, whether that be ERP or whatever. So after we did the implementation of the ERP upgrade in 23, we really worked to align processes and procedures across users for a specific function was a key priority of that project. So then now when we're looking to integrate AI, we're working off of one process in AI versus every customer sales order entry person does a different
Right.
process. It's hard to get AI to follow that, right?
Right.
Some of the AI technology and actions are um, somewhat decision tree based that you would see within normal process flows.
Mhm.
But some of it, you need decision points within that decision tree as well. And as
Mm.
long as that structure and process is defined, the AI implementation goes much, much smoother.
Mm. That's great. I love that. I mean, there's lots to be learned in there, and I think we're only scratching the surface. But one of the areas that I'm interested because of your finance charter is how you and team are thinking about converting operational improvements to financial outcomes, right? So what I mean by that is you mentioned capacity as an example. I think if you're freeing up capacity or creating capacity, you sort of, there's different ways to monetize that, right? It becomes, or literally turn it into cash, as if you've got demand on the other side that's absorbing that capacity. Are we converting capacity in a way that you can see the paper trail through throughput and actual revenue, or is it foregone hiring, right, where you're actually doing the same amount of throughput but keeping headcount flat, right? There's different ways to do the math, and I'm curious how that math is flowing for you with regards to this journey.
So for us, we got to be able to process whether it's more lines of orders, more
Mm-hmm.
orders themselves, more volume, not just dollars, right? That could be a
Mm-hmm.
change in either product mix or pricing or whatever. But we got to
Mm-hmm.
see that activity being done with the same number of users or transactional participants, right? Customer service agents inputting orders. We got to see is that as we've made transitions or changes in our environment, that we actually see that volume or capacity for additional volume go up
Mm-hmm.
and see a return on that. So whether it is additional sales orders coming in now, if the demand's not there, right? COVID happens and nobody's flying. Uh,
Yep.
Capacity doesn't mean a whole lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as we looked at COVID coming back and we had gone through rifts and furloughs and people and the attrition of people leaving, now being able to take on additional volume through that growth. I mean, there were years coming out of COVID, which we all experienced, right? Especially in aerospace, 30% growth year over year. Well,
Yeah.
we couldn't hire quick enough to be able to handle that. And so, how did we distribute that to our 3 facilities globally
Mm-hmm.
and handle that volume and who handled what versus what we'd historically done is most of our business was serviced out of the Phoenix location. Then coming out of COVID, we had distributed that more to our different geographic global regions to handle that. And again, to handle the hiring and everything that was needed to do that. Well, now we're seeing the ability again to handle the same number of orders that we did last year with 20 to 30% less people. Now, again, while we say we're not seeing the 40 to 60% reduction in personnel with those number of orders, is well, we're expecting more from our customer service agents of interacting with the customer, not just spending all your time doing what the system can do and inputting data, right? We want you to engage with the customer more and have a greater customer intimacy. That way we understand what's coming in their order frequency. When's the next order coming? What are they needing? When are they doing a change out of their cabin colors or whatever the case may be?
Right.
And being more tied in with that, it allows us to do that and help support the business as we grow more.
Oh, that's great. That's great. No, it's great. I mean, I just remember many days, where it's really easy for operational savings to evaporate before they become financial impact. At least in a dispersed operation, it's not just within four walls. It's more of an ecosystem, and so you've got multiple facilities, and you're managing through that. And I think that's where a lot of companies that I interact with are looking for guidance in terms of really what that math looks like. In terms of what is the bottom line that publicly or privately traded companies, whether they're being, subject to public market scrutiny or private investor scrutiny, they're wanting to see the outcomes in dollars and cents, right? And they want to see certain trending, certainly ROI on the investment, but certainly they're looking as well for transformational impact, right, with regards to agentic AI. And And that kind of leads to my next question, which is about auditing. And, again, this is an area that I've researched, but you could probably keep me honest here, is that AmSafe operates, obviously being part of the aviation industry, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of compliance obligations. AS 9100, FAA Part 145, TransDigm has their own Sarbanes-Oxley obligations. So when you move into a world where AI is less about making a recommendation to a human and it starts acting as an agent, doing things like releasing a PO or rescheduling a line, they're taking steps, they're doing things agentically, in some cases autonomously. I'm curious about what does that mean for folks in the quality, wearing the quality hat, either internally or maybe external auditors. Are they looking for things that perhaps you weren't prepared for, or maybe you were prepared for? I want to understand how that environment has evolved.
So let's split the quality the quality audits and AS 9100 versus the
Yep.
financial audits. So
Yep.
on
Yep.
the
Yep.
quality audits, again, we wanted to move first to a digital router and digital workflow on the floor versus taking paper documents that we had been doing historically and having inspectors sign off on each step in the process. We needed to get that digital first before we had the AI integrated in. So that was a step in our journey. Just trying to do it all at once, or trying to say, hey, nothing on your shop floor is digital, and now we're going to add AI to it, doesn't do a whole lot for you, and probably just adds more complexity and problems in the process. So with the digital router, making sure that the auditors were comfortable with capturing the signatures and capturing the review based off of the auditor that's signed in to the system, and that then passes the quality requirements and checks and documentation that we need. That was step one. Then as we go to the financial audits on the other side, integrating in with our internal and external audit teams as soon as we started down that journey. So as we look back at 25 and looked at what we were trying to do, the processes we were trying to impact, walking them through that, but helping them understand where we would have human intervention in place, and that we wouldn't have the system just automatically run and create POs and sales orders and work orders and all that. Really gave them a different level of assurance and confidence as we were moving forward. But then also making sure that the system had a documented audit trail that we could run for any process to see what decisions or what information that the system had looked at to process something else. And then again, what user had interacted with it, confirmed the review, and allowed it to be released. That was the big thing for us, is we didn't allow AI to run rampant or have full control. We wanted to make sure that it did a lot of the transactional activity, but we still had a human intervention as well.
Yep. Common practice. Yep. Absolutely. Well, as I asked a little bit about the world beyond sales order entry and the hundreds of other potentially addressable opportunities, and one of the questions I have is back to this idea of budgeting and approval. The I would say one of the ideal scenarios is that you're able to achieve this, I would call maybe a flywheel, to use an overused term, but where you're almost self-funding subsequent phases with the savings and the benefits that you're getting from preceding phases. So you're using some of the phase one results to fund phase two, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm curious, is that too academic? Is that part of the case? That's part of the journey that you see as you start to build, the next brick and the next brick and the next brick? Are you actually able to self-fund to a degree from the savings from the early phases, or it just doesn't work that way mechanically? Or maybe you can tell me how that's working from your seat as the finance executive.
That for me is more within a project and within a particular
Okay.
vendor chosen to move forward with than it
Okay.
is the overall scope and focus of AI of the organization. As we look, we still have projects that are proving out concepts this year while I'm
Yeah.
looking for additional funds to fund next year's projects that some are very clearly defined and laid out. Some we know
Hmm.
that we have a go get as far as savings, and AI is going to help us get there. But we don't have the clear picture of exactly what we're going to do, what vendor we're going to do it with, or the impact that it's going to have yet when we're
Yeah.
ultimately setting the budget as far as capital funds and how much is going to be allocated to AI as a part of those
Got it.
capital funds.
Got
But
it. Got
ultimately,
it.
when
Got it.
I'm approving a specific project, I have that done in phases with that
Mm.
vendor, Champion being one of those that, hey, we're going to do the proof of concept and then we'll release funds, right? Then we're going to go forward with the next phase and we're going to see a portion of what we're looking to implement or improve with the agentic AI and see the reductions in process time for a particular area. Then we'll expand and move forward with phase two of that project. And that I've done more to hold the vendors accountable and not just write a blank check. And I'm a very big proponent of fixed firm bids versus um, endless change orders with software companies.
Yeah.
Um, I think we all know stories about SAP bankrupting companies from time to time with the consulting fees and stuff. So making sure that we don't get in that endless loop of fixes
Yeah.
and change orders, but everybody understands the scope on the front end. We prove each stage, and then we go on to the next one, and that's when we release funds with those vendors. That's proven to be the most successful with us. We did some um, we'll say bidding and review processes with a number of AI companies, and a couple of them being very large AI companies. And some of the dollars that they're throwing out there for it to help your business, just as a starting point, is pretty insane. I mean, with these companies that work with large government entities, very large multinational organizations, um, I mean, if you look at a procurement team, right? My procurement team has 10 people in it. Home Depot's procurement team nationally probably has 1,000 people in it. So if
Yeah.
they're coming in trying to save funds and money, they can promise the world to some of these organizations that, hey, if you cut your 1,000 personnel procurement team by 250 heads, here's the savings. I don't have that much savings to go after, right? So as you look at
Yeah.
mid-sized businesses, making sure that you partner with the right AI organization that can deliver results, but you hold them accountable through the process. That's how we do it on our end.
No, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And I think we've learned sometimes the hard way. That's where our preferences come from in terms of dealing with partners and vendors. But with that, maybe that's a good way to dismount. I'll give you the last word, Kevin. This is an awesome story that's just beginning, it seems. And is there anything that you would have done differently to date on any dimension of assessing, selecting, deploying, and scaling AI within AmSafe? Anything that you would do differently, and maybe use it as advice for people that might be earlier in this process than AmSafe is?
I would say making sure that you have internal resources educated, whether that
Mm-hmm.
be yourself, depending on how large your team is, how large your global footprint is. But the certification in most cases, whether it be, I've seen a decent one through MIT, UT Austin. I mean, there's schools across the country that offer a lot of good resources. Anthropic offers a lot of free resources online, but making sure that you have team members and that you yourself are somewhat versed in the subject matter versus relying solely on outside vendors to direct you. And then I think, secondly, making sure that you set up stages of performance and review that are tied to financial outcomes is
Mm-hmm.
critical as well. Because a lot of the AI companies that I've seen and worked with, they promise the moon on the front end. And when you don't know what you don't know. And then as you get further in, you realize that you waste a lot of time, resources, and money and haven't really gotten that far. So I would say proof of concept and having internal resources that can help in the decision making and review that are trained on it, I would say are key and something that I wished I had done better on the front end.
Oh, that's great. That's great findings there, Kevin. Well, listen, we've overstayed our welcome by a bit, but this has been awesome, Kevin. I appreciate your willingness to spend the time with us. I do want to remind folks that, Kevin, you'll be in Chicago. I think it's September 21 to 23, if I'm not mistaken, at the Champions of
Yep.
Manufacturing event that QAD is hosting. I think they're doing one in Europe as well the next month. But I do want to thank you, Kevin, for spending the time, and congrats on the progress. I do want to thank again QAD's partnership on this, without whose participation and support we wouldn't be able to bring this to you today. So thank you for bringing Kevin's story to us. Looking forward to meeting you, Kevin, in Chicago. Encourage everyone to come to Chicago if you can. If not, we'll catch you on the next episode of the Enterprise Edge. Take care, everybody.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.